Stay in touch with us on Facebook and Instagram at Unique Yet Connected. You are now listening to the 46th episode of Unique Yet Connected podcast. The theme for this episode is the love that costs us too much. Hello, brilliant souls in and around the world. Nolitha Kinga is my name. Dolokazi is my clan name. And this is episode 46. A warm welcome to Unique Yet Connected podcast, where we treat our episodes as mini workshops so we can best share the wisdom of systemic family constellations. Thank you for joining our movement of translating this wisdom into a practical language that all of us can easily understand, and most importantly, implement in our daily lives. The theme for this episode is the love that costs us too much. Dear listener, I'd like to, just as a warning, this is a sensitive episode. So as we go into it, you can hear my voice is a bit shaky, but let's hold space and be here. We are in this together. Remember, when you comment, ask questions, like and share our content and links, you help us grow together. And there wouldn't be a podcast without you, myself, Kinga, Nick, the ones who came before us, and Bert Hellinger, the founder of the work that is most fulfilling for Kinga and I. And as always, Kinga is on the other side of the virtual. Hi, Kings.
Thank you, Noli. Hello, dear listeners and co-editors. And yes, dear listeners, we would like to ask you to keep sharing this knowledge because it can change lives for the better. Also, we would like to thank you for your contribution in helping us to be chosen into the top 10 South Africa family podcasts by FeedSpot. You are our inspiration in building and opening up the theme about the laws of love and romantic relationships. Please continue to share your questions, comments, and insights on uniqueyetconnected@gmail.com and on WhatsApp 076-289-6670. You can also join our monthly virtual connection circle every last Tuesday evening of the month. To receive your links, subscribe on our website www.uniqueyetconnected.com or check for updates on our socials at uniqueyetconnected.
Thank you, Kings. Or simply drop us a WhatsApp message so we can share the link. Again, our WhatsApp number is 076-289-6670. And you can also join our WhatsApp group on 079-913-4934. Your insights, questions, and experiences about life, relationships, and money matter. We are still opening up about the signs of codependent behavior. If you've been with us since the beginning of this episode, we'd like to ask, how are you doing? What have you discovered about yourself? And if this is your first time with us, welcome and hope you will enjoy. Kinga and I discovered a lot about ourselves and we supported each other through it all. And in some instances, we booked constellation sessions. And if you need support in any way, remember, we are here for you too. And you can also book a constellation session if you need to get to the root cause of what's bothering you.
Yes, we are here for you, and you can contact us on whichever channel that suits you best. Via our website, drop us an email, on WhatsApp. You can send a message to us on our socials, and we will respond back to you, we promise, because we are here to answer your questions and support you in the best way we can. Now back to the episode. Just a little guidelines that we have established in the previous episodes that people can exhibit codependency in different ways and in varying levels. And in this episode, we carry on reading through and discussing the list of the signs of codependent behavior by Erica Swinley. In the past episodes, we have started to assess our level of codependency by the criteria of whether this feels very much like me or a little bit like me or not at all like me. You can scale them between 1 and 10, 1 being not at all like me and 10 exactly like me. Pause the podcast and bring your notebook if you haven't already done so and start the work. So I will ask Nolly to read through again the list and some signs of the codependent behavior.
Thank you, Kings. My notebook is right here, and here comes the list. Lacking boundaries between yourself and others, blurring lines in relationships. You struggle to see where you end and the other person begins. Feeling low self-esteem, fearing rejection and abandonment. We have worked through these points in episode 35, and you're welcome to go back to the episodes to listen to them. Then in episode 36, we looked at apologizing or accepting blame to avoid conflict, being who someone else wants you to be, ignoring your own needs, putting other people's needs before your own, anticipating and reacting to someone else's needs, which may be perceived accurately or not. It took us 2 episodes to crack this one, episode 37 and episode 38. In episode 39, we looked at feeling like you've lost your sense of self. And in episode 40, we still explored this point. In episode 41 and 42, we discussed needing to control, including making decisions for others or managing them. In episode 43, 44, and 46, which is this episode, we're looking at doing things for people that make you feel uncomfortable just to make them happy. You can see, dear listener, that this is a very complex one. It took us 3 episodes. And in the upcoming episode, we will look at taking on too much, basing your mood on how someone else feels, not on your own emotions, resenting, not receiving appreciation for your actions. And over to you, Kings.
Yeah, as Noli already mentioned, this is a delicate and very sensitive thing we would like to talk about in this episode. It is sexual abuse. And unfortunately, this happened and happens with too many of us, and it happens with too many children. And gender doesn't matter, boys or girls, it can happen too. And sexual abuse is something which, for some reason, we feel ashamed to talk about. It is almost like the shame belongs to us and not to the perpetrator. Sexual abuse by people who we know and love and trust links in with doing things that we feel uncomfortable about to make another person happy.
It is a very sensitive subject indeed. And before I say a lot, please clarify how sexual abuse links in with doing things that we feel uncomfortable about to make another person happy. In our prior discussion on this episode, you mentioned that a toddler can sense that the act is uncomfortable in their body, and can you speak to that?
So I would like to mention this because our listeners were not part of our discussion when we prepared for this episode. While we were preparing, we talked about if we should bring sexual abuse into the podcast. We realized and acknowledged that this is a sensitive topic, and that is why we had a full discussion about if we can talk about this or not. I feel strongly about this, that this very much belongs with this theme of doing things that make us uncomfortable to make another person happy. And one of the things that I mentioned in the previous episodes is the gut feeling, the certain tightening of the pit of our stomach or feeling of a turmoil in our stomach. This uncomfortable feeling in our gut helps us separate if we are just kind of resentful to do what we have to do because it inconveniences us, or it is uncomfortable on the way that we can feel it in our body. And from a very early age, already as a baby, we know what our body is saying to us. My body is hungry, or I have a dirty nappy and it needs to be changed because my bum is uncomfortable. Our body is innately programmed that it knows what feels right and what feels wrong. When we talk about doing things that make us uncomfortable to make other people happy in this episode, a very, very important thing to point out here is that we are talking about the person that the child loves and trusts. And the love factor is very important because the child wants to please this person because he loves this person.
Are we only talking about children, or does this topic include young adults?
We are actually adolescents until the age of 26.
Oh, yes, maybe the early 20s, because I've met people in their 20s who say they were raped by a relative or a close family friend.
Okay, so just to clarify that it is not rape that we are talking about here. With rape, we are aware that it's an abuse and we wouldn't do the act to make another person happy. In this episode, we are mainly talking about abuse that happens with children. The child doesn't know yet that the act is not right, but he has an uncomfortable feeling that this shouldn't be happening. In case of rape, we know that we completely don't agree with the act. And with young adults, it could also happen that they agree to a certain sexual act or acts which they don't want and otherwise wouldn't agree with because it makes them uncomfortable, but they agree with it to make their partner happy. Younger the victim is, the more likely it is that the sexual act is based on making another person happy. And what is the same in case of a young adult and a small child who are pushed into doing sexual acts, that they are uncomfortable with what is happening and they are paying a very high price.
Yeah, I know a lot of people find it hard to believe um, a teenager or a young adult, and they would ask, how could you allow yourself to get molested repeatedly for over such a long time? Some people share sexual abuse stories that started when they were 6 years old up until they were teenagers. And in most cases, they are accused of wanting and enjoying it. In this episode, I'm discovering that it has to do with paying a high price for love. I'm not sure if I'm understanding it. Can you speak more to why the child tolerates this for so long?
This is a relevant question. I would say there are two reasons. One is shame. You are told by the abuser that what happened here is a secret. And even as a little child, you already know that this is something you shouldn't talk about. You told by the perpetrator that this is between you and him. You know that this is something to be covered up. As a child starts to grow up, more and more she understands that this is something which you shouldn't share because it is somehow shameful. And this shame is so big that often even adults don't talk about what happened to them. They will not share it, even when they are already like 50 years old. Even at this age, they are still ashamed about what happened to them. The second reason is when the child gets older, the child understands the consequences of if he talks about the events, the person who is abusing him might end up in prison. And the child might feel responsible for taking away the breadwinner from the family. How will my family survive if the breadwinner ends up in prison? Now that we're talking, actually, there is a third reason that I heard from a lot of victims that they allowed the abuse to go on to try to protect and save their younger siblings from the same fate. And often we see that they only start to talk up about the abuse when they see that it started to happen with their younger siblings too. And the common point here between the 3 points is that the victims often believe that they have to sacrifice themselves for the family.
I know someone who told the mother about the sexual abuse from a stepfather, but the mother dismissed it and it continued for a long time. And my question about that is, a couple of questions. Did the child do it for this man since he could have played a role of the father figure, or maybe he was a breadwinner, or was it for the mother?
So obviously we would have to look into it on an individual level. We can just say that it is always how it is. But out of experience, in most of the similar cases, the child would be doing it for the mother, or if not for the mother, but for the family. With the mother, the child could pick up the fears of the mother, that maybe the mother is thinking about, oh my God, how am I going to feed my children? What if we end up on the street? And when the mother knows about the abuse and allows it to go on, there might be a sacrifice of one child for the sake of the whole family.
And yeah, it's difficult. And like you said, even for an adult who was a victim of sexual abuse, it's not easy subject to talk about because of the shame attached to it. I've had a similar situation happening to me, and right now I'm questioning my adult self. Yes, it was uncomfortable, and I didn't say anything. Was it to make that person happy? And what was going on? I blocked it for such a long time that I doubted myself when it resurfaced. And the reason why I can speak a little bit about it now is because a few years back, I started opening up about it. I also spoke to my mom about it. And of course, she was livid. And for the longest time, I thought it was my fault. And some of the people who were close caught up with the situation and they shamed me for it. They gossiped and everything as if I asked for it. And that is why it was so hard for me to say something.
Yeah, it must have been very painful for you, my friend. It is true that it often happens that the child blames herself or himself for the events. They feel that they could have stopped it, or they could have done something to avoid it happening. Or maybe they did something, and this is the reason why it happened with them. Or because they didn't talk up at the right time, now they lost the momentum to talk up. And this guilt, what the victim feels, is often what the abuser uses to blame the victim by saying that you are the one who's doing this with me. You are the one who's creating this desire for you in me. The victim is often also blamed for flirting with the perpetrator. Very important point. The victim of sexual abuse must always remember that he or she was not flirting, but genuinely loved and trusted this person. And the most important thing when we do the counseling work with the victim to have them move out of the position of the victim, because in the victim position we are not strong. When we don't talk about what happened to us, when we keep it a secret, it forces us to stay in the victim mode. And what we are trying to achieve with the counseling is that the child or the youngster reclaim their innocence, because the responsibility of the act and the shame shouldn't lie with the victim of the abuse, but with the perpetrator. Reclaiming our innocence means that we reclaim our wholeness.
Wow. That's so powerful, Kings. I didn't know that I could reclaim my innocence, my wholeness. How do I begin to do that?
So this is definitely something which has to be done in a very safe environment. And that is a bit difficult to do in a podcast. So I would say that it is better to book a session for it. But the most important, as always, when we work with a younger version of us, is to start to love that little one or young one in us. This is already a step towards starting to see the beauty and innocence in that part of us, which we more than probably exiled because it was too painful to see or think about them.
Yeah, I see now how I've exiled the little girl in me.
And going back to your question, why and why did you let it happen? And what could have been the cause? And who did you want to make happy? I don't fully know the circumstances of what happened, but I do know that he was not an immediate family member. So, not your brother, father, or stepfather, but he was a close family member. Am I right?
Yes.
And probably, obviously, this is my feeling, but I would say that you wanted to keep the family unity by not saying anything about the abuse. You knew that if I say anything, this is going to rip the family apart. And maybe his family came to give support to your mom, and she would have been left on her own when you felt that she needed the support most.
Yes, it was before my parents separated, and yes, they were our family support. They were there for us. I admired him. He was a significant male figure in my life at the time, almost like a role of a younger uncle or older brother who was supportive.
Okay, so there was a family unity of your parents, being together which shattered. Suddenly, it must have felt like, okay, fine, now we have a new family unit. It is supportive. I have older siblings who are gonna look after me and I can trust them. People always say that when you have an older brother, he's gonna protect you. Unfortunately, we know that this is not always the case. So, unfortunately, your older brother figure can become your abuser, and because of the trust and their position, they have an easy access to commit the abuse.
You are free around family, right? Because you feel safe. I'm thinking of how free my teenage bonus daughter is in her shorts and short skirts around our home and with her father's relatives because she feels safe. I also don't have this thing that she shouldn't wear short things. I let her be because she's around her family and feel protective of her. I was also like that in my preteens and teenage years. And I was also an affectionate child. So when I was older and trying to make sense of what happened, and before I had the courage to call the abuse for what it was, I used to ask myself, did I do something to receive that kind of abuse from him? You know?
You have asked me how we can reclaim our innocence after the abuse. Even though on our own it might be difficult to reclaim our innocence on the body level, but we can start to work psychologically by looking at the intention behind the act. Did you have an intention to end up in that situation? I'm sure not. And this is true even if, as a youngster, I don't know, but maybe you flirted a little bit. He's a family member, but also a good looking boy, and maybe he said nice things to you, started to groom you, and said how beautiful you look. And it felt good because we are still very insecure when we are so young. And it feels nice if someone notices you and tells you how beautiful you are. What matters is that it was not your intention to move the events in this direction. You were innocently taking compliments from someone who you trusted, and it was a safe environment. You believed that this man should be safe for me to take compliments from.
What I know is that I didn't have the intention of getting that kind of attention from him. It all started in a movie theater, my first theater experience, where he touched me. And I remember on my way back home thinking this didn't happen. All I wanted to do was block it. This is actually the first time I'm acknowledging where the first act happened. And then the second act went too far and I was disgusted with myself instead. Can that kind of experience affect one's sex life?
Yes, yes, it has a very big effect on our sexuality, obviously, because this is most of the time, this is the first sexual experience for the child or youngster. And this experience is often confusing for different reasons. One is that we stop trusting our gut feeling and cut ourselves off from our bodies. We do this because seemingly our bodies might have betrayed us. The act was something that we didn't want to do. It made us uncomfortable, yet our bodies might have reacted to the sexual impulse. Now the body is untrustworthy and feels unclean. Two is that love and sexuality become one and the same in our minds. This is why some former victims become promiscuous or asexual or measure the depths of the love in their relationship with the sex life, not with the closeness. And here I would like to bring in something that there is an interesting thing of sharing the experience of the abuse with our partner. It has often been seen in the constellation field that our partner, especially when we talk about our men, he wants to protect us from danger, and this belongs to the traditional male role. When they hear about the abuse, they often feel weak, that they couldn't protect us. I know this doesn't make sense on the conscious level, but we have seen this phenomenon often. And it can negatively affect a couple's sexual life because the men feel inadequate.
Yeah, this is all new. I thought sharing with our partners or husband was good for the relationship. But what you just said resonate, you know, Yeah, I could actually feel everything in my body now. Um, I also feel that this is when I started to disconnect with my body. And I'm thankful to doing yoga because it helped me reestablish that connection. And I always say yoga saved my life.
Yes, doing some kind of body work is very important to connect with our body. And I wanted to bring in another damaging thing that happens when people will tell us that we are lying. You also mentioned it. So you start to doubt if this really happened. Obviously, we have some memories of it. Pictures do pop up in our minds, but because our most common coping mechanism is to block the memories of the events from resurfacing, we start to doubt if it even happened to us or not. And this is the reason we don't confront our abusers, because how can I destroy a person's life and accuse him when I'm not even sure that it happened to me? It also happens that we minimize the events to be able to cope with the fact that the person we trusted betrayed our trust. Oh, it was not such a big thing. We can get over this. It also happens that we minimize the events to be able to cope with the fact that the person we trusted betrayed our trust. Oh, it was not such a big thing. We can get over it. And this is a different type of lying. We're lying to ourselves to be able to stay connected to this person who abused us. But of course, this is not the right type of connection and also keep the events hidden and unhealed in us. Normally, the big breakthrough comes when we realize that the abuse is true. It did happen. And then this is the moment when we often want to share what happened with us, with our partner. Because finally we can tell someone about it, what happened to us. But our life and sexual partner is not the right person to share the events with. We should share it with a therapist or a counselor who is equipped to guide us through the healing process of reclaiming our innocence. This point is very important. We shouldn't bring it home, but obviously we do, because this is a safe place and we bring it home and share it with our partners who are not equipped to deal with this information. And some partners, yes, they are able to handle it, but it is a gamble that I wouldn't advise you to take. Rather work through it with a professional.
Yeah, no, you've said a mouthful. So after feeling disgusted with myself, I did exactly what you just said. I minimized everything. And in the end, I blocked it, again and again. And it almost came up when I was doing my first documentary called Amabele meaning my breasts, but I still blocked it there. So yes, doubting myself was also a big factor because the people around him at the time, whom I also trusted, believed whatever he told them and made it worse. I remember when this person made connection with me a few years back. Yeah, a few years back from today, I was enraged, asking myself, how can he try to contact me after all these years? How can he do that? Does he not know that he violated me?
You asked me about your perpetrator. How can he do that? More than probably he minimized it like it was not a big deal. Or even at his old age, he hasn't realized what he's done. If he has daughters, I doubt that he can go on saying to himself that what he has done was okay. For your healing process, you blocking him on social media is not enough. It seems to be reflecting back how you blocked and logged the events inside you. Maybe you can think about whether writing a letter and sending it to him would help you to free yourself.
Yeah, you're right, Kings. He most probably did minimize it, and yes, blocking him. What you're saying about blocking him resonates, and about blocking as a pattern. You know, I did write him a letter and I burnt it.
We all have the right to heal in our own way. Maybe for you it is better for him to receive this letter, and writing it and burning the letter was just another way of keeping it a secret. Yeah, because from outside, his life seems to be not affected by what he has done. And for you, it would be healing to tell him how badly his actions affected your life.
At some point, I did think about approaching him, but I keep feeling scared, thinking, what if he doesn't even acknowledge it and shame me, like I think he did when the people to him realized what was going on? I don't think I'm ready for the double shame, though I feel like I do want to confront him.
Yeah, it feels like I keep on telling you to sit with it, but yes, to sit with it because now we opened up something that was hidden and you will have things coming up. And of course, I'm available to you when you say, I'm ready to work on this. I'm ready for a session. Now that we are reaching the end of this episode, I would like to bring in a very important point because, dear listener, as you know, we work with family systems. And in the family system, there is a set of order that allows the gifts to flow down to us from the previous generations. The generations who came before stand behind us and support us. But what happens when the sexual perpetrator is our father or grandfather? How can we allow this person to stand behind us as a support? They are not safe. Yet, if they are not standing behind us, it negatively affects our lives. By cutting them off, we also cut off all the positive support that would flow down to us. This is a very big work, and the work that is almost impossible to do on our own. I'm telling you this from experience, my own experience. So, this more than probably, yeah, you need the support. I needed the support because we have to separate the father and the abuser in our mind, body, and heart. The father who gave us life to stand behind us, yet for us to claim back our innocence from the abuser in our father. This is achievable, and when it happens, we can take all the gifts from the generations behind him and us, and at one stage to even take gifts from our fathers. But I will not lie and make it look easy. And yeah, this is hard work. Our instinct says, I don't want to do anything with this person. I don't want him near me. He is not safe. And I want you to know that during this work, nobody expects the one who is doing the work to let the perpetrators off the hook and say that it was okay what they did. And what we're working for, we are working on freeing ourselves and moving the focus away from the perpetrator to us. Systematically, it's the best if the father can stand behind us as a father who gave us life, and then we can step out from the victim perpetrator relations to free up our relationship with our fathers from this burden.
Oh, what a challenging episode this was. Thank you, Kings. Thank you, Nick. And to you too, dear listener, for holding space for me. It still hurts very much. I don't know if I'll ever completely heal from it, but the journey continues. Please do share this episode. It might help the next person. And Kings, what can we expect in the next episode?
I deeply honor your courage and honesty. And I know this was a difficult episode for you. And I believe we can completely heal from it. I'm talking from personal experience. As I said, it takes time. In the next episode, we will be talking about taking on too much. We have touched on this a little bit in episode 44, because obviously all these points are interlinked and connected. They do not happen in a vacuum. They are all part of the signs of our codependency levels, and they were all created in the family.
Thank you for listening to our 46th episode, and another big thank you to Nick Mons from That Guy Productions for making us sound fabulous and on point. Our 47th episode is in 2 weeks' time from now. Tune in on the 26th of May, 2024 at 10 a.m. South African Standard Time. And please do remember that our episodes are evergreen, and you can find them on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, and on YouTube. And you can also catch the link on our social media. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Like our pages and engage with us on Facebook and on Instagram at Unique Yet Connected, unique spelled YOUNIQUE. Stay unique, stay connected, and remember, you are one of a kind, and we can only create a really meaningful podcast together. Siyabulela Kosonom. Bye-bye.
Siyabulela Kosonom. Thank you. Bye-bye.